Today I am the teacher and the NASCAR Cup Series field is the student body. I better find some apples on my desk because today I am grading each driver's 2020 season. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. It's that time of year once again. This has become an annual tradition here on Out of the Groove. I believe the last 2 years now I have done one of these types of videos where we go down the list and look at every single NASCAR Cup Series driver's 2020 season in a nutshell, and I assign them a dramatic letter grade. Some may pass with flying colors, A+++++ all around the room like a Christmas story. Others maybe should have studied a little bit more before Daytona. So let's get to it. We're gonna look at every single full-time Cup Series driver this year's season as a whole, and I am going to hand them their definitive groovy grade for the 2020 NASCAR season. That's not a good way to call it. It's just a grade, just a letter grade. You know, we've all been in school before. We know how it works. Let's jump right in and start out with some of the rookies. We had a lot of Rookie of the Year contenders this year. Let's start out with Tyler Reddick. I'm gonna start out pretty easy. I'm gonna give Tyler Reddick a B. He started this year off really strong. You know, Richard Childress Racing, after a terrible 2019, had pretty low expectations, but Reddick came out and, you know, shocked a lot of people at Phoenix, drove up to second before blowing a tire, and he finished 19th in points this year in a car that finished like 25th in points last year. In a lot of ways, Tyler Reddick seemed to be that shot in the arm Richard Childress Racing desperately needed, so I'm giving him a B. Christopher Bell is kind of the opposite of Tyler Reddick. Reddick started the year off strong. Christopher Bell started this year out pretty bad, but as the summer progressed, Christopher Bell became much more consistent. This was a difficult rookie season for Christopher Bell. Sure, he was driving for a TRD Toyota-backed team, but it was Leavine Family Racing. This was Leavine's first year having a true technical alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing, and there were clearly some growing pains that needed to be worked out. No practice or qualifying definitely hurt Christopher Bell. He still managed to crack the top 20 in points at the end of the season, so I'm going to give Bell a B-. And of course, Joe Gibbs Racing announced Christopher Bell will be driving the 20 car next season, so that was a pretty cool bit of news for Bell. Brennan Poole, let's give him a B for Brennan. He did pretty much exactly what he was supposed to do this year. He got to run some truck races as well. Not in great equipment, really. His job was just not to make headlines each week, and for the most part, I think he accomplished that. He also came onto this show and gave one of my favorite interviews of the year, so for that, Brennan Poole gets some points. Solid year for Brennan Poole. Quinn Houff also came on the show, actually, so shout out Quinn Houff, but unfortunately, Quinn Houff did not succeed this year at rule number 1, which is stay out of the way of the fast guys, most notably at Texas when Quinn Houff, you remember trying to get on a pit road, ended up wrecking into Christopher Bell and several others. Really, that was the only blemish on what was otherwise just an unremarkable year for Quinn Houff. I'll give him a D. John Hunter Nemechek is a difficult one to score. He started out this year so strong. Remember Darlington, the first race after the pandemic? He finished 9th in Front Row Motorsports equipment as a rookie at Darlington. And shortly after, he finished top 15 at Charlotte, Bristol, Talladega. He had a top 10. But once the summer really got rolling, things kind of went back to what we expected from a rookie in Front Row Motorsports equipment. Nemechek only had 1 top 10 in the final 22 races of the season. He didn't run particularly bad more often than not, but just unremarkable the second 2/3 of the season. I'll give John Hunter Nemechek a C+. And then there's Cole Custer. Hey, you win Rookie of the Year, that's automatically worth quite a few points. Cole Custer was not very consistent this season, but he had the highlight of the year among the rookies, winning at Kentucky, that fantastic late race restart. With that win, he was the only rookie to qualify for the playoffs this year, but he was eliminated without much of a fight in the first round. If not for that win, Cole Custer's season was actually looking quite unremarkable. He was running around 23rd in points before that win at Kentucky, so it's hard for me to go crazy and give him like an A or anything, so I'm going to give Cole Custer a B+ for his season. You win Rookie of the Year, you get points in my opinion. Especially when this year's rookie class was pretty stout with Reddick, Christopher Bell, and others, all competing for the same honor, so credit to Cole Custer there. Let's move to one of the more established veteran drivers, Kurt Busch. I'm going to give Kurt Busch an A- this season. Somehow he improved on what was already a surprisingly good 2019. Remember last year he stepped into the a car that had not had much success recently, and consistently ran top 10 in points all season long, won at Kentucky last year. Unfortunately, last year he was eliminated in the first round, so this year he built on that. He got another win, that clutch victory at his hometown track of Las Vegas, qualified for the round of 8 in the playoffs. Another consistent, very professional season from NASCAR champion Kurt Busch. I'm giving him an A- minus. Hey, that win at Las Vegas had to be pretty freaking cool. I'm sure he's going to remember this year forever. Let's talk about the second RCR driver now. Like I said earlier, Richard Childress Racing had a disastrous 2019, so expectations I feel like were pretty realistic for 2020. Credit to Austin Dillon. He had quite the resurgence this year. Got that win at Texas to qualify for the playoffs. He was fantastic in the first round of the playoffs and actually qualified against all odds for the round of 12. He did that on points. They showed tremendous speed the first few races of this year's playoffs. A complete 180 from the team's performance just a year ago, so a lot of credit to Austin Dillon. I'm giving him an A-. Really solid stuff from Austin Dillon this year. Now let's talk about the younger Busch brother, the defending NASCAR Cup Series champion. Kyle Busch was eliminated in the second round of the playoffs. It was the earliest any defending champion has been eliminated from the playoffs since the knockout round format was introduced in 2014. And no matter how much lipstick I try to put on this year, it just doesn't look great for Kyle Busch. 2020 was worse than 2019 in nearly every major statistical category. And of course, he went winless through the first 33 races this year before getting that victory late in the season at Texas Motor Speedway. That's the deepest into a season Busch has ever gone without getting a win. But hey, that win at Texas did extend his streak. He's won a race in every single year he's raced full-time in the Cup Series, so that is noteworthy. I'm not going to tear Kyle Busch apart, but when you're Kyle Busch, you drive for Joe Gibbs Racing, and you're the defending series champion, expectations are really high. This year, Busch did not come anywhere close to meeting those expectations. I'm going to give him a C- for his 2020 efforts. Martin Truex Jr. is another difficult one to score. He got one win this year at Martinsville early in the season, and he made it to the round of 8 in the playoffs, which is pretty solid given this was his first year working with rookie crew chief James Small. And if we compare Martin Truex Jr. to the rest of Joe Gibbs Racing, you could say he was the second best driver this year. 2020 was such a weird year with no practice, no qualifying. It was a weird year for Joe Gibbs Racing with Hamlin winning a bunch, but Kyle Busch hardly winning at all. After just this season, it's difficult to say how much of Martin Truex Jr.'s past success was due to Cole Pern. I think a lot of this year's decline, because Martin Truex Jr. was worse this year than he was in 2019, was largely due to just Joe Gibbs Racing seemingly taking a step backwards. Again, aside from Denny Hamlin, Joe Gibbs Racing didn't look all that special this season, and I think Martin Truex Jr. just felt that worse than others. I'm going to give Martin Truex Jr. a B for his 2020 season. You know, it's hard to say this year was great. Definitely it wasn't as good as last season, but given all the circumstances, new crew chief and everything, you know, I can't say this year was a total disappointment. Just all right. I'll give him a B. That's not bad. Let's keep talking Joe Gibbs Racing. Man, Erik Jones, my guy, he picked a bad time to have the worst season of his Joe Gibbs Racing career. He barely missed the playoffs, of course. He ended up going winless, and late in the summer, he was informed that he would not return to Joe Gibbs Racing next season. This was after Levine Family Racing shut down, and Gibbs needed a place for Christopher Bell. Erik Jones ends up getting the short end of that stick. Now, Erik Jones did announce just last month that he will be racing for Richard Petty Motorsports in the famed 43 car next season, which, as cool as that is, it's safe to say that is a clear downgrade as far as his equipment goes. It really feels like a disappointing season, unfortunately, for that Jones boy. A lot of misfortune early in the season. A lot of it was, I think, more on the team side, not even really Erik Jones's fault, but unfortunately, Jones is one who's on his way out. So overall, a disappointing season for Erik Jones, saved slightly by the fact that he is going to still race Cup next year, because there were some doubts about that, and he is still going to race for, you know, a recognizable team, not a super competitive team, but, you know, a team that has something going for it. Either way, it's hard to say this was a great year for Erik Jones. I'm giving him a D for his 2020 season, unfortunately. Let's talk about this guy. Kevin Harvick had the best statistical season of his Cup Series career. 9 wins, an average finish of 7.3. That, I believe, is the best average finish for a season since Jeff Gordon also had a 7.3 average finish in 2007. He didn't win the championship that year either. Now, this has become pretty typical for Kevin Harvick. He's finished 5 of the last 6 seasons with an average finish of 10th or better. That is insane. For reference, Jimmie Johnson only once in his career ended a season with a top 10 average finish. So the last few years have certainly been magical for Kevin Harvick, but once again, he comes up just a few spots short of the ultimate goal, a NASCAR Cup Series championship. Now, both Kevin Harvick and his crew chief Rodney Childers would be the first to say that this year was not a failure by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, you win 9 races, get that kind of exposure for your sponsors, you get that purse money for winning. That's a pretty huge deal. So this certainly was not a bad season for Kevin Harvick. Now, he ended the season kind of in a rocky way. He ultimately finished the season with only 1 top 5 in his last 7 races. That's how this current playoff format works. I mean, you're rewarded for being great in the regular season with all the playoffs playoff points and everything. All those playoff points kind of bailed him out in the round of 12 where he did not run particularly well. His best finish in the round of 12 was 10th. But once he got to the round of 8 and had issues at Texas and had their worst race of the season at Martinsville, those playoff points were just not quite enough to get him over the hump and get him into the championship four. So that was certainly disappointing. That ultimately does not tarnish what was otherwise a fantastic season. I'm going to give Kevin Harvick a solid A for his remarkable 2020 season. Great season for Kevin Harvick. I cannot say the same for the two JTG Doherty drivers. We'll start with the lesser of two evils in this case, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., if you can believe it. I'll give Ricky Stenhouse a C+ for this season. His first year driving the number 47 Chevy. And looking at his numbers, they were pretty much exactly the same as his numbers at Roush. Very, very close across the board. So it's hard to say Stenhouse fell short of expectations. It's also hard to say that he exceeded expectations. I'm going to give him a C+. He was fine. His teammate Ryan Preece this year, unfortunately, had just an abysmal season, quite frankly. After a mediocre rookie season last year, things just didn't get any better this year. At one point over the summer, Ryan Preece finished dead last in 3 straight races. Pocono, Indy, and Texas, last. I don't know how they did. It's remarkable. I've never seen anything like that. Really just a terrible year for Ryan Preece. I'm giving him an F. I'm sorry, Ryan. I wish things got better. You know, hey, on the plus side, he will get a chance to redeem himself next year. Adam Stern reported earlier this week that it is likely Ryan Preece will return to JTG Doherty for a 3rd season in the Cup Series, so he'll have a chance to redeem himself next year, but my goodness, this year sucked. I'm sorry, it was just bad. On the flip side, let's talk about some of the Championship 4 contenders. Brad Keselowski had a fantastic season, 4 wins, a Championship 4 appearance. Great first year working with his new crew chief, Jeremy Bullins. They seemed to hit their stride right away. I'm going to give Brad Keselowski an A- for this season. The only negative is that Keselowski was not able to land the multi-year contract I think he was hoping for. The competitive free agency class, as well as market uncertainty because of COVID largely, forced Brad Keselowski to kind of settle for a 1-year extension with Team Penske, which is not quite what I think Keselowski had his eyes set on when he was set to hit free agency this season. So a little disappointing there, but still a great season. Can't deny that. A-. Denny Hamlin, I feel like at this point, anytime Hamlin doesn't win the championship, especially after he has a great season like he had this year, it's disappointing, but I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm going to give Denny Hamlin an A. I mean, he had 7 wins this season, an average finish of 8.3. Statistically speaking, this was the best season of Denny Hamlin's career. And throw a 3rd Daytona 500 win in there. I mean, this is a great season for Denny Hamlin, even though, once again, he came up just a couple spots short of the ultimate prize at the end of the season. But given that the rest of Joe Gibbs Racing struggled, I would say, this year by their standards, and especially struggled at the shorter racetracks like Phoenix, the fact that Denny Hamlin was in contention the final race this year, the fact that he had a shot at the championship, and the fact that he still won 7 races. Again, the rest of his team combined for 2 wins. A great season for Denny Hamlin, just didn't get a championship. One of these years he might. He might make it happen. I mean, he did announce a new team with Michael Jordan, so that's a pretty exciting year for Denny Hamlin, even though on the track didn't quite win that title. Let's talk about probably the easiest one on this list. Chase Elliott, your 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champion. He gets an A+. 5 wins this year, plus that all-star win. He's $1 million richer. Saved his best performances for the very end of the season when it matters most. 3 wins in the final 5 races. And in my opinion, at least, he confirmed his status as the best road course racer currently in the NASCAR Cup Series. And that bodes well for 2021 with 6 road courses on the schedule, 7 if you count the Clash. The Chase Elliott era, the Chase Elliott dynasty, is only just beginning. So A+ for Chase Elliott. What a year. Bouncing all around now, let's talk about Ty Dillon. I'm going to give Ty Dillon a C-. Statistically speaking, this season was slightly worse than last year. Of course, we all know the news at this point. Germain Racing is closing down. Sponsor Geico is leaving the team. Still no word as far as what Dillon is planning to do next year, whether or not he'll race in the Cup Series. If he does, it likely will not be for a competitive race team. So with all that uncertainty and coming off a not so great season, yeah, I'm going to give Ty Dillon a C-. Roush Fenway Racing disappointed the heck out of me this year. Let's go ahead and start with Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman's 2020 season got off to a horrifying start. Of course, that terrifying crash at the end of the Daytona 500. Thankfully, just a couple days later, Ryan Newman was able to walk out of the hospital without sustaining any major injuries. Ultimately, Newman, though, missed the next 3 weeks. Then the pandemic hit, and Newman was able to take that time at least to heal up, and he was able to return once NASCAR returned in May. But unfortunately, the Ryan Newman we saw in 2020 was nowhere close to the Ryan Newman we saw in 2019. Remember in 2019, Ryan Newman showed up at Roush Fenway Racing, had 14 top 10 finishes, made the playoffs. This year, Newman had only 2 top 10 finishes and ended up 25th in points. A noticeable step backwards from last season, unfortunately. I'm going to give Ryan Newman a D, and that hurts because obviously he had to overcome a lot this season, but it just was not a good season, unfortunately, for Ryan Newman. His Roush Fenway teammate Chris Buescher also disappointed me a bit. You know, last season with JTG Doherty Racing, Buescher was able to crack the top 20 in points, and this year joining Roush, which, like I said, had just made the playoffs with Ryan Newman the year before, I thought maybe Chris Buescher could contend for a playoff spot, but no, he never really did. He actually did have more top 5s and top 10s this year compared to last year, but he actually finished a spot worse in the points, 21st, than he did last year in the 37. So just kind of a disappointing season for Chris Buescher, but he will be back next year in the 17 car. Maybe they can build on something. I'm giving Chris Buescher a C for this year. Just wasn't as good as I was hoping for. And we'll keep with it. I'm going to give Daniel Suarez a C+, actually. His first year with Gaunt Brothers Racing, it was unremarkable. You know, didn't have super high expectations when he joined that team. He did what he was supposed to do. He hung in there. He made his sponsors happy. And now he's taken his talents to a brand new NASCAR Cup Series team, Trackhouse Racing, a team that's going to be heavily aligned with RCR. So Daniel Suarez will be getting an equipment upgrade next season. So that's pretty great news. Overall, this year wasn't terrible then for Suarez. I'm going to give him a C+. Matt DiBenedetto's a tough one. First year with the Wood Brothers, still winless unfortunately, but he did make the playoffs. Mission accomplished. He kind of wobbled his way into the playoffs the last few weeks and was eliminated pretty quickly in the first round. But on the plus side, he did just enough to snag a 1-year extension with Wood Brothers. He'll be in the car next season. Now, next season's going to be a lame duck season from the get-go. They already have announced that Austin Cindric will drive that car in 2022. So the moment the season begins in February, Matt DiBenedetto is going to be focused on racing for the Wood Brothers, but half of his focus is going to be on trying to find a ride with a completely different team for 2022. So I don't know, my expectations for 2021 are kind of mixed. I'm going to give DiBenedetto a B- for this season. He made the playoffs. That was the most important goal in my opinion. Next year, the goal should be winning a race. Obviously, though, DiBenedetto is going to be focused on landing just another competitive ride, hopefully by 2022. So, yeah, all right. Good, decent season. Let's keep talking Team Penske. I'm going to give Ryan Blaney a B-. Now, honestly, that's probably a little better than he actually deserves. This year was a total disappointment, in my opinion, for Ryan Blaney. Both of his teammates, Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski, made the championship 4. Ryan Blaney, meanwhile, won 1 race all season, and it was a photo finish at Talladega where he had to sideswipe Erik Jones to get it. And Blaney was eliminated unceremoniously, I should say, in the first round of the playoffs. And this was after a crew chief swap in the offseason where many people thought Blaney was maybe getting the biggest upgrade, being paired up with Todd Gordon, 2018 series champion with Joey Logano. But this was really a season of disappointment for Ryan Blaney. Now, he did end the year with 5 straight top 7 finishes, building some momentum to next year. The reason I'm giving him a B- though, and not like a C-, which I probably should, is because Ryan Blaney managed to ink a multi-year contract extension with Team Penske. He'll be in the 12 car through 2023, and that's key. Look around. Very few other drivers have that kind of job security at this moment. Alex Bowman signed a 1-year contract. He's staying with Hendrick through, right now, only 2021 confirmed. I mentioned Matt DiBenedetto's on a 1-year deal next year. Brad Keselowski's on a 1-year deal. Even William Byron, after he won Daytona, Hendrick announced that he's good through 2022. But Ryan Blaney set through 2023. That shows Team Penske has faith in him. I just hope that faith isn't misguided because 2020 was not as good of a season as we should expect from Ryan Blaney. But I'm still going to give him a B- because big contract extension like that is key. Let's talk about his teammate Joey Logano. I'm giving Logano an A-. He started this year off so strong. 2 wins in the first 4 races, then the pandemic hit, and when they came back racing, Logano was kind of just okay. But he came on strong in the playoffs, got that huge win at Kansas in the round of 8 to qualify for the championship 4, and he was very competitive at Phoenix this last weekend. Again, a part of that Penske crew chief swap. This was his first year with Paul Wolfe. Paul Wolfe's a championship crew chief himself, so expectations were high for Joey Logano this year, and in my opinion, he met them. Maybe even slightly exceeded them, making it back into the championship 4 this year, something he missed out on last season. I haven't talked about the second front row driver yet, Michael McDowell. I'm going to give McDowell a B. Solid improvement over last season. He ends up 23rd in points. That's like 4 spots better than he was last year. Aside from the All-Star Open incident with Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell had just a clean, consistent season, in my opinion. And it's worth noting that all 4 of his top 10s this year came at non-super speedways. So, I mean, that's something to hang your hat on. The driver really matters. Let's talk about the last couple SHR drivers. We'll start with Erik Amarola. I'm going to give Erik Amarola a B+. A good season. He had that tremendous streak during the summer months where he had, 9 straight top 10s? Made it to the second round of the playoffs before he was eliminated. He did not get a win this season, which is a little disappointing. That's really all I want to see from Amarola next year. I want to see him get a win, especially at a non-super speedway track if he can. In my opinion, if you drive for Stewart-Haas Racing, you should be getting at least 1 win a season. So that should be the big goal for Amarola next year. Clint Bowyer also made it to the round of 12. I'll give him a similar score. I'm going to give Clint Bowyer a B. He also went winless in what ends up being his final full-time season in NASCAR. He ends his 4 years at Stewart-Haas Racing with 2 wins. Both came in 2018, 3 playoff appearances, and he was able to land a pretty sweet gig with Fox Sports starting next season. So I don't know. While I don't think Clint Bowyer necessarily wanted to retire from racing just yet, I think Stewart-Haas Racing probably didn't have a seat for him next year. This Fox Sports deal may have came at the perfect time, so it's hard for me to say this was a bad or disappointing season or anything like that for Clint Bowyer. I'm going to give him a solid B. Just solid year. Gosh, we're getting near the end. I forget how many drivers race in NASCAR. Super Shoe, my guy Corey LaJoie. There's still no word yet as to where LaJoie's going next season. Go Fast Racing is shrinking their operation. They're going to be a part-time team next year. I think you can definitely argue LaJoie ran better in 2020 than 2019, but a multitude of mechanical failures, many of them fuel pump related, destroyed some of their better runs this season. So if you look at their points finish, if you look at Corey LaJoie's average finish on the year, very similar to 2019. And that is a bit disappointing because this year the team was getting some older chassis from Stewart-Haas Racing, not a huge upgrade or anything like that, but a slight upgrade. So, I mean, the fact that LaJoie hasn't yet announced any plans has me a little concerned, so I can't give him a score better than a C+, honestly. There wasn't a whole lot to be excited about or happy about as far as how LaJoie's season played out with Go Fast Racing. I hope he lands in a better and more stable situation in 2021, but we're still gonna have to wait to find out. This is a tough one. This is painful. Matt Kenseth. Statistically speaking, this was by far Matt Kenseth's worst season of his Cup Series career. He had a tough job. He was called upon last minute to jump into a new car that he'd never driven before with a completely new rules package he'd never driven before. No practice, a brand new team, a new manufacturer, a crew chief swap midway through the season. Kenseth hadn't raced in NASCAR in 18 months. I guess the expectations should have been pretty low going in. Maybe my expectations were a little too high. And in fairness, Matt Kenseth did show up in May, his first race, and ran 10th at Darlington, so he set the bar pretty high for himself with that opening run. But aside from that race and his second place run at Indy, he almost managed to cross off the final crown jewel in his trophy case. Pretty much nothing went right for Matt Kenseth this season. He consistently ran like 18th, meanwhile his teammate Kurt Busch was running like 9th or 10th. A disappointing finish to an otherwise fantastic and Hall of Fame worthy career. I really don't want to have to give Matt Kenseth an F. I put off making this video for a couple of days because I was really scared I was going to have to give my boy, my guy, Matt Kenseth, a failing grade, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I turned to you all on Twitter and I'd asked you guys to give me reasons why Matt Kenseth shouldn't get an F. I'm not talking about an A or a B or C even, just not an F. And thankfully Kyle Petty weighed in and gave me his arguments. 1, he's Matt Kenseth. 2, no practice, no qualifying, no face-to-face with the team in early races. 3, grade on the pandemic curve, that's fair. 4, he's a great guy for saying yes, he could have said no. And 5, he's Matt Kenseth. I don't know about you, but in my opinion, Kyle Petty makes a pretty convincing argument. I'm going to give Matt Kenseth a D. Call him a teacher's pet all you want, but I can't fail Matt Kenseth. The deck was stacked against him at the beginning of the year. I've been hard on Matt Kenseth this year because aside from those couple of races, he has really disappointed this year and made mistakes that I don't usually see from Matt Kenseth. So it was not a great year for Matt Kenseth. I'm going to give him a D though, because all of you on Twitter told me not to fail him, which I appreciate. Thank you for sparing my feelings. We haven't touched on most of the Hendrick Motorsports drivers yet. Let's start out with the heavyweight, Jimmie Johnson. Unfortunately, Jimmie Johnson did not win a race in his final full-time NASCAR season, and he missed the playoffs for the second straight year. His numbers is like average finish, top 10s, top 5s, everything. Actually, when you compare 2019 to 2020, very similar. I can't be too hard on Jimmie Johnson. The man did not get the send-off he deserved this year. I'm going to give him a C. He did finish strong in his final race at Phoenix. He made all those IndyCar announcements, announced he's going to run all the road courses next year, so that's pretty dang cool. Might not have been the best NASCAR season in the world for Jimmie Johnson, but I think Jimmie Johnson himself still had a solid year, so I'm not going to dock him too many points for that. I'll give Jimmie Johnson, 7-time champ, a C for 2020. I think that's pretty good because I think the last 2 years I've given him Fs. Maybe this just means I have lower expectations now for Jimmie Johnson than I used to. That's probably it, honestly. In 2018, I thought he was still going to contend for championships, and no idea this was coming. So at least Jimmy can say that. He's passing the groovy grading scale for the first time since this has been implemented. Congratulations, Jimmie Johnson, valedictorian. Let's talk about the new driver of the 48 car. That's right, Alex Bowman. Bowman had a solid season. He came out of the gate strong. He won at Fontana back in March. He cooled down a bit after the pandemic, but he came on strong in the postseason. Made it to the round of 8. Overall improved slightly on his numbers from 2019. That's important. And of course, the big announcement just a few weeks ago, ago that Alex Bowman signed a 1-year extension with Hendrick and that he will move to the 48 car next season. Big shoes to fill. I'll give Alex Bowman a B+ for a very solid, a very good 2020 season. We're almost to the end. The final Hendrick driver to score is William Byron. Willie B finally got his first win at Daytona, a clutch victory to sneak into the playoffs. Now, unfortunately, he was eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, but I will give William Byron some points for his 3 iRacing Pro Invitational wins. Yeah, come on, those broadcasts got over 1 million viewers. He deserves some credit for those. And he did sign that contract extension through 2022, so not a bad year at all for William Byron. I'm going to give him also a B+. We finally made it to the end, and we're finishing it off with probably the most complicated driver to score on this list. No one had quite the year Bubba Wallace had. First off, on the track, Bubba Wallace had the best year of his career. Finished 22nd in points, which is 6 positions higher than the team finished last year. Finished the year with 5 top 10s, which is by far a career high. A reminder that Richard Petty Motorsports has not been a truly competitive team in a number of years. But Bubba Wallace and crew chief Jerry Baxter really helped turn some things around this year, so he deserves points for that. Off the track, things, of course, were a bit more complicated for Bubba Wallace. Early in the summer, Bubba Wallace promoted banning the Confederate flag at NASCAR races, something that NASCAR actually then enacted as a legit policy. Then, of course, at Talladega, he was involved in the noose controversy. He became a household name in America that weekend, with even the president tweeting at him. Now, I don't think Bubba Wallace handled that situation perfectly. I think he said and did some things that weren't particularly helpful. But with all the attention and all the pressure that was put on him during that time, I feel like he did about as good of a job as any of us could have expected or wanted from him. There's a lot of confusion around that Talladega story. If you go watch my video I made at the time, you can find out what really happened. But after that whole mess, Bubba Wallace saw a sudden influx of new sponsors, and he was ultimately able to leverage a lot of that into a brand new opportunity with a new race team funded by Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin, a brand new Toyota race team, a Toyota racing development team. Bubba Wallace became a polarizing figure this season, but he also managed to work with what he had to land himself a fantastic racing opportunity next season with 23XI Racing. So overall, as tumultuous at times I'm sure this season felt to Bubba Wallace, I'm going to give him an A for this season because I think where he is today is better than where he was at the start of the season. At the start of the season, he was racing for a mediocre team with Richard Petty Motorsports, was in danger of really falling into mediocrity, and then this year, with help from Jerry Baxter, he put together a great statistical season, gained national media attention, and was able to partner up with Michael Jordan, a sports culture icon, helps bring Michael Jordan into NASCAR, which is huge for motorsports. And now here we are in November, looking ahead to 2021. Bubba Wallace is going to get the best opportunity he has had since stepping into the NASCAR Cup Series. So Bubba Wallace is in a better place now, as far as his NASCAR career is concerned, than he was 12 months ago. So for that reason alone, I'm giving him an A. I think he gets a solid score for this year. But that is the final driver that we have to score here today. Woo, we made it. Let me know which of those scores you agree with. I'm sure there's some of those scores you definitely disagree with. Let me know what scores you would give your favorite drivers down in the comments below. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. That is going to do it for this episode of Out of the Groove. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. Even though it's the off season, we're still cranking out content much like this one, so stay tuned for more. And as always, a huge thank you to my fantastic Patreon supporters. Couldn't do this show without your continued support. Working on some other 2020 year in review type videos that you will see very, very soon. So like I said, subscribe, stay tuned. There's a lot more coming from this channel and from Out of the Groove. Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your day.